on top of it.
I did. Get a jump start.
It's freeze to death.
Tell me about Scott Friday.
Sometimes I walk.
Yeah.
Make it really uncomfortable.
Oh, they're just sitting together.
I think a lot, yeah, we're heading that See slash him.
Story on the hall, you know, the trailer behind you.
For sale sign right now, I had to ask the compliance guy, we get an opportunity, but he's got a for sale sign on
I
that.
saw that, that's Floyd.
Have you met him? Well, we can have a conversation
Yeah. Somebody got me, they call me Jimbo. What, your scabba? What's the origin of that? Yeah.
And come back next day. They could never get rid of it.
And her.
Well, they're out of trucks.
So it wouldn't be unusual.
It'll be,
Okay.
Spiritualist.
Yeah, he's supposed to check on that one
Tell
too.
me about your life.
I think that's his stuff.
That's wonderful.
He said he was going to buy that, clean down all the stuff.
Thank you.
All right.
One less thing on my plate.
She called me right before this meeting, so I couldn't. She said, it's not accessible. It's not.
No, I really should have heard tales.
That's not the fix. One person back there. It has to.
Walking around.
Hey, tell me how they publish.
Everybody ready?
All right, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Town of Abingdon Planning Commission, the May meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everyone that is here tonight. We appreciate your being here. Your comments that will be called upon during the night are certainly welcomed by the Planning Commission. There'll be two opportunities for you to address the Planning Commission. First will be during the public hearing, which is first on our agenda tonight after we approve the minutes. And during that period of time, you'll have the opportunity to address the commission And then also prior to that time, we've moved it to the front of our agenda as public comment time. You'll be allowed to comment to the Planning Commission at that time about any subject that you feel is germane and important. Your comments at that time are limited to 3 minutes per person. We would ask anyone that would like to address the Planning Commission, please come forward to the podium in the center of the room and first state your name and your address so that we will have that for our records, which are being kept tonight. First of all, let's begin with having a roll call. Mr. Boswell, would you do so, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Wilson is absent. Dr. White?
Here.
Mr. Bradley?
Here.
Mr. Moraney?
Here.
Mr. Schuman is absent. And Mr. Austin.
I'm here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much, sir. First on the agenda tonight is approval of the April 22nd, 2019 minutes. Each of you have had those circulated to you. I hope you've had the opportunity to review those. Are there any changes or modifications to those minutes?
I move we approve.
Second?
I second.
All right, seconded by Mr. Anderson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll
All
abstain
right.
since I wasn't here.
And likewise, I'd like to abstain because I was not here at that meeting. All right, next on our agenda tonight is a time for public comments. As I said a moment ago, please approach the podium, give your name, your address for our records, and then you're welcome to address the Planning Commission. Your comments are limited to 3 minutes. We had a sign-up sheet on the outside tonight. We've had 2 people who've signed up for public comment time. However, it is not limited to these persons. If anyone else would like to address the commission, we will certainly entertain that. Mr. Levine, you're first on our list.
Hi, Joe Levine, Post Office Box 1836, Abingdon, Virginia, is my mailing address. I'd like to offer some food for thought regarding the certificate of appropriateness that's on the agenda tonight for the Powell's Restaurant. I think it's the last thing that's on the agenda, was added recently. The Historic Overlay District is very important to Abington. The charm of the town is important. And I know this planning commission in the town has taken great pains to try to keep the ambiance of Abington like Abington. For example, there was a hotel over near exit 19 that had painted with some bright colors and was asked to repaint. There's been other times when buildings have been asked to change. I know there was a significant discussion when for the Beef O'Brady's that's being built next to the movie theater. And it blends in really nice the way it is now. It's tamed down, calmed down. The design I saw on the Powell's with the big French fry thing on it and the drink on it and all the bright colors, it just, I'd like you to consider maybe asking Powell's to tone things down. And I'd also say that I lived a lot of time in Bruges, Belgium. Great tourist town. It's actually a World Heritage Site. McDonald's went in there. But they put their McDonald's in an old historic building, and the only thing they've got is a sign in the window that says McDonald's. They don't have any golden arches. As a corporation, they could change to meet the town. I was in Sedona, Arizona, week before last. Went out hiking the Grand Canyon. The McDonald's there. It's got the same color as all the other buildings. The entrance where you drive in has got arches that aren't any taller than this podium. People find it, and it fits into the local culture. And I just ask, when you're deliberating, having your discussions tonight on that certificate of appropriateness, that you might want to consider not having all these colors and things right on Cumming Street, the entrance corridor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Next on the list is Ms. Harmon.
I want to pass.
Okay, all right. Is there anyone else that would like to address the Planning Commission? All right. I'll pass it to Ms. Stanley, please. Thank you. If not, we'll move on to the public hearing that's on our agenda tonight. We have a public hearing, which is a special use permit, application to construct a 3-bay truck garage and parking for a small trucking company and truck repair. The work would be in the M1 zone. It's commented on in the agenda that it is served by tractor-trailer traffic. James E. Cozart is the residuary trust owner, Post Office Box 613 in Abingdon. Property is located at 550 Lowry Drive here in Abingdon. Mr. Boswell, would you like to give us sort of an overview of that?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cozart approached the planning department for a special use permit in the M1 district pursuant to 17.3 of the town code. The proposal is to construct a metal 3-bay auto repair garage to serve tractor and trailers. Town staff reviewed the application and found that it did comply with all the requirements of the special use and the M1 district.
All right. Is there anyone here who is a proponent of that, would like to speak in favor of granting the special use permit? Yes, sir. Please come up.
I am Michael Cozart. You would like my address?
Please.
15064 Quail Ridge Way, Abingdon. What we're proposing is to build, as you said, a 3-bay garage for a small trucking outfit. The property was originally, it was actually originally built for tobacco re-drying facility, which was part of the old 3M facility that was right down below it. Later it was used as a tobacco warehouse. It was an antiquated type building, metal sides, wood post. We tore that down probably, I don't know, 15 years ago or so. And what's there now is just a gravel lot. And basically what we're putting back is really a small warehouse. It's going to be used as a for the trucking outfit, the outfit that was needing a small place to work on their trucks.
How large is this site, Mr. Cozart? Do you have
The whole site, or just what we're
a
working
part
with?
that you're using for this garage?
The garage is,
Probably around an acre to acre and a quarter, something like that.
yeah,
Oh, must be, okay.
yeah.
And could you give us an idea as to how much traffic you expect would be generated by that and what frequency they would be using?
My understanding is he runs about 4 or 5 trucks, and they're on the road basically all week, and they'll be coming in from time to time. You know, maybe in the weekends you might have the 3 or 4 trucks parked there any given time. He's a flatbedder, and like any trucking outfit, is when the truck's on the road, he's making money. So he's going, you know, he's not going, his trucks aren't going to be there much of the time. It's just sort of a headquarters for him.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So my question to you is then, so this is essentially going to service trucks that are just owned by the company, owned by the business that's there?
He does do a little work on the
Oh,
side,
okay.
but most of it's his own.
Okay, most of it's his own
Yes.
fleet?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's not gonna alter the traffic flow on Lowry Drive?
Not much. Where this building is, used to be 5 warehouses on this property, and you can see that 2 of them are still there. This location actually, during when we had tobacco, there may be, I don't know, 8 or 10 tractor trailers coming in and out of this location a day. Of course, this won't be anything near that. So.
You're going to maintain ownership of it. You're going to be renting it to someone.
Yes, we will be. We're building the facility and leasing it to the trucking outfit. Yeah.
Will your lease have any restrictions in terms of the number of trucks that could be there at any one time?
We do not have any restrictions, but the size of the property will limit that.
Okay.
There's, you know, if you crowded them in there, you might get 10 tractor trailers in there parked at one time.
There's ample room for that amount, right?
I'm sorry, what?
Ample room for that?
Oh, yeah, yes,
In the
yes,
back?
yes. And the access to the road is also, one access coming on the properties is 50 feet plus the entrance, and the other one's about 40 feet. So there's, as far as getting in and out, it was designed for tractor trailers.
Okay.
The question I had was, I asked Jason before the meeting, I understand that it's a collector road that is adjacent to, do you know what type of road that is? That goes
Laver
from-
Drive, that vicinity is a collector road. It's wider with,
I mean, it looks like it's
Wire
pretty
systems.
strong. So I mean, it's made to take truck traffic. It's obviously zone industrial, so I'm sure there's,
Laver Drive is acceptable for truck traffic, yes.
okay. All right.
Have you sensed any opposition from the neighborhood regarding that?
I have not heard a thing. No, sir.
All right, any other questions of this gentleman? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank
Is
you.
there anyone else during the public hearing portion of this would like to make comments? Anyone opposed also?
Yes, Robert Goldsmith, President and CEO of People Incorporated, been president of the Abingdon Terrace Apartments and Abingdon Village Apartments, the two multifamily apartment complexes that are directly adjacent to this property. I'm guessing that were the Cozart's property to be thought about being developed under current rules right next to a residential area, that you probably wouldn't have done that this was probably preceded that kind of zoning requirements in the town of Abingdon. But I'm not here at this point to speak against this development, but I've got some concerns. The apartment complex directly adjacent to this property is an elderly apartment complex. All the people that live there are elderly or have disabilities, and I'm concerned about disruption of their peaceful enjoyment of their homes. Some questions that I could not figure out the answer by looking through these materials was first, if the existing entrance off Lowry Drive is the only entrance that would be used for this. If it is, that would make me happy, because it's a good deal of distance away from the Abingdon Terrace Apartments, the apartment complex right next door to it. I'm concerned about time of day that mechanical work would be going on in this property, if it's going to happen between 9 and 5, or if it's going to be happening during the nighttime when the people in the apartments would not enjoy having loud noises. And then also if there are plans for any kind of buffers to be planted, trees or anything like that, separating this area from the residential area right next door to it. The other thing that I couldn't tell by looking at the materials that I got from the town was exactly where on this property the building would be built. If it's, where we are is to the right-hand side as you look at this picture up the hill. I'm guessing it's down below the existing building, but I really couldn't tell, and so I was hoping to get an answer for where on the property the proposed development would occur, what time of day the operation would be, and then if the proposal includes any kind of sound buffering and stuff to break up the line of sight pollution for the people next door.
Mr. Goldsmith, they provided me, and was in our packet, a drawing that shows roughly where the building is to be located.
Jason actually just drew that on there.
Oh, just drew
Yeah,
that?
the map was, because I asked him that same question where it was on the, and that's the general vicinity of where it would be
Would you
located.
look at that, sir? Yes, sir.
Sir, the Cozart would be required to screen this property. It has to be screened from public view. There's an existing fence around the property.
Right.
And they also will be required to put, as you can see on this drawing, this rendering, they're proposing to plant trees to help screen the building.
That's from Lowry Drive.
From Lowry Drive.
I'm more concerned about the other side of the property that is where that property adjoins the Abingdon Terrace Apartments.
Right inside.
There are other buildings there, I thought.
Yeah, there's two.
There are two buildings
existing
there.
buildings.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not,
Yeah.
I think that this, I'm not, exact, but I think that this building is going to completely shed the view of this building.
Okay. So you've answered all of my questions, but one, I believe, which is if there would be any restrictions on hours of operation of a garage there, it could be a 24/7 kind of thing.
Well, they better not be doing anything after 11 o'clock, because we have a townwide ordinance of 11.
Is this, and this might be a question to ask the applicant. Typically, this work is gonna be done, it's gonna be an enclosed, maybe he can come back up.
Yeah, but I
Podium.
think I
Yeah.
understand. I think if you're concerned with the work being done, they'll be done with mechanics, and they're gonna work during the day. It's gonna be probably 8 to 5.
Are they working inside the
They're gonna
building?
be inside the.
They're gonna be inside
They're
the
gonna-
bay?
Yeah, even mechanics work's gonna be done inside the building.
Okay.
Also, if you go back to the layout, do you have the one that has all the buildings? Okay.
The black
Right
here.
here. Okay. Now, the apartments are right here. Is it?
Yes.
Okay. These buildings will stay here. The elevation of this building, with the top of this building will probably be about ground floor of this one.
Okay.
So-
So that one will totally screen it.
Yeah, I doubt you could even see the building. And as far as noise, I don't think there'll be any problem. I really don't. Because you're even further up the hill than, I mean, you're probably looking at the roofs of these buildings when you're up there. So I doubt you'll even be able to see the building. Also, the building we put up is like 7,500 square feet. This building is what? What's the size of this building?
4,800 square feet.
Okay, 4,800 square feet. What's the square footage of that building?
24,000.
Okay.
And that
So
was
it's gonna be a very
29,000.
small building compared to what's there.
One of the questions that I asked Jason was, I mean, this is zoned industrial, so unless they're doing anything that's abnormal to an industrial district, I mean, those are some of my concerns, and I think the fact that this was a special use, I don't, for whatever reason, that's what the code requirement is. But, I mean, my personal opinion, I don't see anything in there that's going to not be consistent with what's going on up there right now. But that was my major concern, but it is only industrial, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldsmith. Is there anyone else that would like to speak during the public comment time regarding this special use permit? Anyone else? If not, I'll declare that the public hearing is closed for comment at this time. And commissioners, what are your thoughts in regards to one concern that I always have in regards to garages is a lot of times if a vehicle can't be completed, the repair can't be completed, or if it can't be done at all, the vehicle ends up getting set outside for an extended period of time. And that would be one concern that I might have too.
I understand that, I have that concern too, Mr. Chairman. I don't think the public would be able to see it from Howard Drive, sir, to be honest with you. There's a knoll there, the topography changes, it's a pretty good elevation change there.
But they're not allowed to leave equipment or anything outside, or like tires or anything like that?
No.
That's against our code, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And we do have an ordinance against abandoned vehicles, which
Yes,
that could
sir.
be considered after a period of time.
Yes, sir.
Other comments by the commission?
I make a motion. Motion in order.
Yes, sir.
A special use permit be granted to the Cozarts for construction of the garage.
All right. Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any additional discussion? Mr. Boswell, let's have a roll call vote on this, please.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Dr. White? Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Mr. Moran?
All right.
Mr. Olson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is an application for a certificate of appropriateness, Highland Ski House. Sandra and Gary Clayton, Post Office Box 1944, Abingdon, Virginia. Owner Karen Raines, 440 Fairway Drive in Abingdon. Representative COA to take down the existing vinyl awning, the frame, and replace it with a metal gray roof awning with wooden support poles over the entire front business side of the sidewalk, and add on a covered front door offset going into the entrance of the building, located at 909 East Main Street here in Abingdon, tax map number 106-5-6. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Karen Raines, I'm at 440 Fairway Drive here in Abingdon. So I'm here, I guess, with any questions.
Tell us about your project a little bit here.
It's gonna be a gray metal kind of roof awning. It's gonna have metal, wood post. We plan on putting guttering on it. The underneath will be vinyl siding, soffit. And then at the two double door at the entrance, we wanna have like a little porch that comes out. Same thing with the metal roof and the post.
Will there be any lighting with
Yeah,
this?
we have existing lighting now under the old awning that's there, and we're gonna try to incorporate that in. We may have to take a couple pieces out, or maybe add a few.
Okay. Color-wise, is shown as depicted here, or will it change?
We're gonna do gray.
Gray, you said that, I'm sorry.
Gray,
Yes.
because we have trim on the building that's gray now, and it kinda all works together, and we thought that would blend better.
All right, anyone have any questions of Ms. Raines?
There's an awning of some sort there now.
It's a metal awning.
And you'll replace
Well, it's
that?
actually a vinyl, it has metal framing.
Yeah.
We're gonna take all that down,
Okay,
completely remove all that.
but talk about the part that stands out from the door that covers the entrance.
Oh, that's just a little pop-up tent there
Yeah,
that.
and you're gonna make that permanent.
Not that big,
Okay.
yeah, but there's gonna be a little area there.
It's gonna project out just a little bit.
Right.
It's a more
yeah,
permanent entrance, I see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions of Ms. Raines? Thank you, ma'am. All right. What are the thoughts of the planning commission in regards to this application?
I'll make a motion.
All right.
A special use permit be granted to Highland Ski House.
Okay, it's actually a certificate of appropriateness.
Excuse
That's
me,
good.
That's right, COA,
Yes.
all right.
All right, motion's been made to grant the certificate of appropriateness as outlined in this application. Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
All right, any additional discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you very much. That's approved, Ms. Reynolds. Next on our agenda is an application for a certificate of appropriateness for McDonald's, 45-0206, Teresa J. Simmons, McDonald's USA LLC owner, John Connolly and Kristen Lang, Britt Peters and Associates, 101 Falls Park Drive, Suite 601, Greenville, South Carolina. Representative for the certificate of appropriateness remodel of the existing McDonald's restaurant, which is located at 525 Cummings Street, Abingdon, Virginia, tax map number 020-12-6. I understand this matter was brought before the Planning Commission at the last meeting, and I was not present, so I apologize for not understanding what the issues are in regards to this, but do we have a representative from McDonald's? Hi, how are you tonight?
Good, how are you?
Good.
My name is Kristen Lang. I'm from Britt Peters and Associates. We do civil engineering for McDonald's.
Okay.
We are in Greenville, South Carolina.
Great.
So McDonald's is proposing to remodel their second store in Abingdon. I'm sure you may have seen the first store that's already done. They are rebranding. All the red mansard roofs are going away. They're going to a much cleaner look with their stores. This store would be remodeled inside and out. The outside work that's not exactly, it's a rendering, just to give you colors and, to show you the clean look of the signs and the color. There's some landscaping up against the building on this particular store. This store has a sunroom on the side that's going to be removed as part of the remodeling. The basic structure of the building stays the same and where it is. The other exterior work that is proposed is strictly for ADA compliance. It's redo the parking on the exterior and provide a connection to the public sidewalk. The interior of the building, they are adding ordering kiosks on the inside so you can walk in and just punch in your order, and they will bring your food out to your table. And all new finishes on the inside, flooring, etc. And the bathrooms would be ADA compliant as well. Nothing happens in the kitchen at all.
All right, questions?
Is there any difference between this remodeling and the one you did at the other McDonald's?
No, very similar.
Okay.
Very similar. It's the same look. It's the colors are going away. The red.
More contemporary now with the gray.
Exactly. It's a little more modern. It's much cleaner looking. The interiors are fabulous. Really, really nice to just go in, which is surprising since most of the business is through the drive-through that they're doing this. But the ordering kiosks are a big thing that they're doing.
Is there any difference in this one and the one you presented last month?
No, sir.
So you won't make no changes?
Well, we reviewed the ordinance and asked for some clarifications, and none were forthcoming, so we stayed with the brand.
Mr. Boswell contacted me between the last meeting and this meeting and asked that I help him formulate a response to the request that was made. And I was totally without any way of doing that since I wasn't at the meeting. I don't know what the issues were, but they did ask for clarification from the town. And again, I was unable to give it.
We sought clarification. I took your advice, Mr. Chairman, from Mr. Ditham, who chaired that meeting, the previous town manager. He couldn't give me any clarification as what the entrance corridor requirements were as far as contemporary and traditional architecture. So I asked Ms. Lane to come back and get some clarification from the Planning Commission.
So if we approved it once, why not again this time? What's the big issue? I don't understand.
It wasn't approved.
Well, I think he's referring to the one, the other
The
exit.
other exit,
Yeah.
yeah. If we, if they met the speculation then, maybe at this time, what is the issue? Why should we?
Well,
not
the issue is
approve it?
Cummings Street, really, the overlay district.
Dr. White, exit 14 is also part of the overlay
Right,
district.
historical district, yeah, coming out of Westwood, right? Okay, so that's all I'm saying. Historical district, I don't see the big issue.
I'm new here, I'm gonna make a comment just from my observations coming in new, and I talked to Jason, talked to Ken before he left, and what Jason said is accurate. If it's part of the same overlay district, I guess there's an understanding that maybe the Cumming Street is sort of a little bit more protected conceptually because of the fact that it does lead directly into the historic district. However, you know, if I'm asked to do my job and look at this on the surface and determine, okay, is it in the same zoning district? Does it have the same regulations and guidelines? And if the answer is yes, and the Plan Commission has already approved another one, it's kind of hard for me to deviate from what we've already approved just out of the sake of consistency, unless there was some new requirement. That's just where I'm coming from. I got a fresh look at it. If there's some concerns that you all have, that we can back up, hey, the ordinance allows us to do this, but the ordinance does appear very subjective. And that's what my concern is, that, and we've talked about that, okay, there's some, I want it to be consistent is all I'm just trying to say, so. And that was one of the comments on it, so.
There's a difference of proximity. Jonesboro Road is 2 miles away from the historic district, whereas Cumming Street is just very close. So
You remember when they made Shoney's, and the gas station, and all those up and down, they changed colors? We made Shoney add, whoever did the gas station to add some features to it, to give it some semblance of just not a pure gas station. We have asked repeatedly that stone or brick or something be used in different colors to make things blend in. Now, we may not have the jurisdiction, but still, this is the major corridor into Abingdon.
Reading from the ordinance here, it says architectural styles, building and roofing materials and colors shall be reflective of the traditional architecture of Abingdon. This may be accomplished through building scale, materials, and forms, all of which may be embodied in architecture which is contemporary as well as traditional.
How can it be contemporary and traditional? I don't.
It says you can try to do both. You can't make a new building look old. I mean, it won't work. You can give it a semblance of antiquity, but it's not gonna look old.
Well, what suggestions do you have? I see what's on the screen. This lady standing in front of us right now is probably a bit confused, wondering what you would suggest. And I don't mean that argumentatively, I just don't know what. Yeah, they wrote and asked what we recommended, didn't they?
Yes, sir.
So that
And we couldn't ask.
you recommended something, or was something recommended by
I did not recommend.
town staff?
I did not recommend, I think the language of the code is so subjective and vague, it's hard for any developer to, unless you give specific, instructions with the planning commission, it's hard for staff to give a recommendation to the developer because of the language of the code. I think personally that we need to draft some design guidelines that developers can go by. That's my opinion.
Mr. Chairman, if I could interject something, is that all right?
Sure.
I don't need to climb over one of the people. I'm Cameron Bell, I'm the lawyer for the town. We've had considerable discussion recently at council meetings and otherwise with staff about the zoning ordinance and in particular this overlay district. And I think that the commission has brought out some of the issues that we have before us. The list of the area has no distinction. I understand Mr. Bradley's comment and Dr. White's comments about the proximity to the historic district, but under the ordinance itself, it makes no difference whether it's Porterfield Highway or Green Spring Road or Cumming Street, they're all treated the same. And similarly, if this same design essentially has been approved on Jesboro Road, then I don't see under the ordinance how there would be a distinction just based on where it is. And under the ordinance, if you're looking at traditional architecture of Abingdon, the traditional architecture of Abingdon of the McDonald's, when it was built, was a lot more garish probably than it even is currently. So it is, as Mr. Boswell said, somewhat subjective. I would caution the commission. I think that you're cognizant of all of this, and just to treat everybody consistently and consistent with the code. If there are suggestions, and I think there has been discussion at the council level to suggest some changes to the commission to consider to take away some of the subjectiveness and give a little bit more concrete things to go by, criteria to go by, but we're not there yet. We're at the moment we're stuck with what we've got. I think where the commission is historically is you've already approved something that looks substantially similar to this, and probably have to keep that in mind. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I know what I've lived, but I would have hoped that the McDonald's would have tried it some way to make it fit in better. It's, you know, the owners are in Greenville, South Carolina, in a corporation headquartered in Illinois or somewhere. And to be frank, they probably don't care. They will stick up their building, but I'd hope that McDonald's will have a little bit more community spirit. But I realize I'm now defeated on the, I have no grounds.
I don't think it's necessarily the fact that we couldn't ask them to do something, but unless we give them some specifics, I think it might be hard for them to envision what it is that we want. I mean, if we had, like I've seen some projects like this where they say, hey, could you take the awning out a little bit? And I think they might be willing to work with us on some of those things, but I don't know unless we have a collective suggestion to them. I think it's kind of hard.
You know that this may be their brand now.
Oh, I know.
But there are 500 different styles.
Yeah.
They couldn't stick this up probably in the Asheville Historic District. You know, you can go Google pictures, images of McDonald's throughout the country, and they fit all sorts of patterns and molds. And I just hope that they would do something to make it. I mean, this is a monotone, just a plain ordinary building there that we're looking at.
Doug, you think it does a better job than what's there now?
Yeah.
I mean, I do. All right, anyone have a motion as to whether or not to approve this application for a certificate of appropriateness?
I'll make a motion that we accept this application for approval.
Second.
I'll second it.
All right. Any additional discussion? All right, if not, let's have a roll call vote on this issue.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Dr. White? Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Mr. Marini?
Aye.
And Mr. Austin?
Aye. All right, thank you very much. It's approved. All right, next on our agenda is an application for a certificate of appropriateness. Tom Crosby, Crowbar LLC, 1001 Conrock Road in Kingsport, Tennessee. Owner Stephen K. Hutton and Associates. 245 East New Street, Suite 201 in Kingsport. Representative, the site plan and exterior of a proposed PAL sudden service facility to be located at the Meadows, lot number 10 here in Abingdon. Mr. Boswell, you want to give us an overview of this, please?
Yes, sir. Furnished by Powell Corporation. They submitted a site plan. The site plan was circulated throughout Public Works and Building Department. It complies with all the requirements for site plan review. We had a few things that we sent back comment-wise. I know Public Works had an issue with the entrance, and myself, Planning Department, had an issue with the comprehensive plan, comprehensive signage plan, but they've addressed those issues and resubmitted the site plan, and that's what you're looking at now.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone here that would like to address the commission? Please come forward, state your name and address.
Tom Crosby, I'm CEO of Crowbar, 1001 Conner Rock Road, Kingsport, Tennessee, 37664. So, you know, I know this is a little different. It's gonna be a little tough to get you all to see where we're at with this project. But the first thing is, PALS and what you're looking at was designed, envisioned to be a piece of artwork. And so when we were thinking about coming to Abingdon, historic area, but also an artsy community. This was designed by Tony Browning. He was a protege of Andy Warhol. The whole building as it is, with the food art and everything, was designed as a statement art piece. So the whole thing really, you know, needs to work together kind of in that vein. We are, you know, strongly committed to the imagery, and I'm so pleased that y'all committed to McDonald's, because trade dress is vitally important. If you live and die by P&L, and you know what works, and you know what makes the business function, being as closely aligned to that as possible is really important and key, and I think you've done the right thing for McDonald's. In trying to prepare for this and really think about it, we've had lots of discussions. Food City's been actively involved with us and, you know, trying to tell us, you know, the ins and outs of Abington and how Abington functions and works. We also want to make sure that we're doing what's right for our customer base. So within the past week, we've done a small focus group of 9 customers. We did this focus group at the PALS at Exit 7. We identified customers that lived between that side of Bristol up to Abington and in Abington. Out of that small focus group, we took photos and put various brick details, changing it to an all brick color, which we have one PALS that way in Johnson City. 8 of the 9 did not like it, said it didn't look like a PALS. They thought the image was ugly, confusing. We had one said, it's okay, I prefer the solid color the way it is. The one that's got the little tan strip of brick along the bottom is sort of okay with me, but the vast majority were against it. Another thing that influences us in submitting our original design the way it was intended to be built as a piece of art. The one we built in Johnson City does good, does okay. It's on a Food City property also, where we've purchased a lot. So we have a regression model that's dead on accurate, plus or minus $50,000 what we're going to do. That store does $300,000 less than what our model says it should do. We're 32 months later, and I get 200 plus customer complaints via email, and I answer every one of them about why don't we paint that PALS teal blue. It doesn't look like a PALS. It doesn't feel like a PALS. The other thing that really resonates with us is why we're going to ask that you all would approve it the way it's designed, is one of the complaints was from a mother who said, my child was sick, took her to the doctor. They wanted cheddar rounds after the doctor visit. Went through your newest PALS. My child would not eat the cheddar rounds and was upset because it wasn't PALS. Had to drive to the other side of town and go through another PALS to get the cheddar rounds for the child. So I think that.
Should have went to the McDonald's on the way there.
But I think it's a strong indication of how important trade dress is.
You're telling me the one in Johnson City is not colored?
We've got one in Johnson City that is all brick.
It's all brick and it's not painted?
It's not painted.
Okay. All right.
And like I said, 32 months later, and I'm still answering 200 plus customer complaints every single month on the color.
Do you have a picture of the one in Johnson City?
Not with.
You can probably go to Google Earth and find it. Or Google Maps.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
But anyway, with all of those elements, that's why we're, you know, the fact that Abington is historic, but it's also, I think, known as an arts community. Here we're wanting to put up a large 3-dimensional art piece. Yeah, so there it is. We carefully read through the requirements ordinance. We do understand that we'll have to build it out of brick, So it has a brick veneer on it, so we are calling for brick veneer. We are calling to have it our traditional teal blue color with the food art in place to make the art piece the way it was intended. So it's kind of like Tony Brownie, the artist, designed, conceptualized this for us as an art piece. You know, and we're really into the art. If you come to our corporate office, we've got giant three-dimensional art pieces all over our 8-acre campus. And so we're very active in supporting the arts. The other thing that I'd ask you to consider too while you think about this, because it, you know, it really is a deal breaker whether we can be in Abingdon or not for us. You know, and we try real hard to be a good corporate citizen. So part of our management style is we don't only clean and maintain our properties, we go by and look at any of our properties, look at 25, 30-year-old properties, because people like to do business with what's nice, crisp, clean, and new. We keep our facilities looking that way. But we're good to the community. We clean to the far sides of the public roadways. We clean adjacent lots, not only our trash, any trash. We take care of the community. The other things we try to do is once we locate in a community, we have people from all over the world come to our Business Excellence Institute for training. Once we're in a community, it opens up that training at discounted rates or free for the churches, the schools, and the municipality in any region we're in. And lots of municipalities, churches, and schools and communities we're in takes advantage of that training. So I think we bring a lot to the table. We just, you know, respectfully ask that you all would consider it as what it is, an art piece. I think it will add to the town of Abingdon. I think it'll be a piece of interest. And I do think that if it has a chance of being seen from the interstate, I think people's bypass view now might stop and pull in to experience the rest of Abingdon. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Can I make a point from the development perspective? We talked, listening to the McDonald's and what Jason brought up, that the overlay district's very subjective. So we worked with the 2016 Planning Commission, Mr. Austin, you were a part of that, to develop some design guidelines for the development themselves, and those are recorded as part of the project, and really focused on materials. Mr. Crosby mentioned, and part of our conversation before we went to contract is, he was well aware that he would have to, based on the development criteria, build the building out of brick. That's different than what he typically builds his buildings out of, and it's an added cost that he's incurring to be here. But none of those design requirements called for any kind of color or anything along those lines. And from a development perspective, we feel that this meets the guidelines of the project.
Thanks, sir. One is, I was not on the commission when the Meadows was envisioned or approved. What are the guidelines?
I got them right here for you, Dr. White. Would you like me to read them?
Yes, please.
Use and development of development, section 6.2, minimum design requirements. It says a minimum of 50% of the first floor, front and side exterior building elevations, excluding glass, that are visible from the public right-of-way shall be comprised from the following materials: natural clay brick and/or natural quarried stone products. Secondary facade materials, which may be used up to 40% on exterior building walls, include hard coat stucco, concrete materials, not limited to architectural split-face block, tilt-up concrete or precast concrete, synthetic stucco, fiber cement siding, and/or other materials as approved by the Abingdon, Virginia Planning Department or their designee. Painted smooth-face concrete block, wood, architectural metal, and/or other materials different from those used as primary and secondary materials may be utilized in an amount not to exceed 10%. Those are the requirements.
No mention of color at all.
No, sir.
Is this, Mr. Bell, is this in the overlay? I don't think it is it?
Well, that's debatable.
I don't think it is. I think, excuse me. We had some discussion the other day about what street this is on. I think technically it is on Cook Street Extended and not on Green Spring Road. It is, the development itself is covered by this MOU, and so it does have the design requirements that Mr. Boswell listed. I don't know if you said if they're design meets those criteria, but I assume that you've approved
Yes,
that it
sir.
does. and-
The way that it's written, sir, yes, sir. I do believe that.
So, I don't think that it is in the overlay district technically. I've been told that there is an interpretation that the development either was on Green Spring Road or is adjacent to Green Spring Road, and so maybe that calls into whether it applies or not. But similarly to what we were talking about before, I think but even more so here, I think the intent was to make it more specific to the development as a whole, to the design criteria that are in the MOU, that are more specific and a lot less subjective than what is in the overlay district, even if it is in the overlay district. If you are to look at the overlay district and this architecture, of course, that we were talking about before, architectural styles reflective of the traditional architecture and architecture which is contemporary as well as traditional. We have murals downtown and lots of other art pieces and that sort of thing. I think if Mr. Cruikshank or D.R. Mullins or someone had designed this, that people would be behind it. But I think to answer your question, that from a strict legal matter, I don't think it's in the overlay district. People on council have disagreed with that interpretation, though, in full disclosure.
I do have a question for Matt, our Public Works Director. What is the street, because I know we were redesigning, we relocated Green Spring Road. What is the address of the facility when it's constructed? Is it Green Spring or is it?
That building will have a Cook Street address.
It'll have a Cook Street address.
All, well, I won't say all, but the majority of the buildings in the Meadows will have will have a Cook Street address. Some will be addressed off Robertson Road.
But it was at one time, it was one property, or it still is. Well, they'll be out sold actually. So.
Where this lot is really didn't have an address at all. It was
It
part of
didn't. You're right.
It was
it
part
didn't
of a
have an
bigger
address.
parcel that I guess once was Green Spring Road. But where Cook Street extended is a new road that didn't exist before, but this will be on Cook Street.
It would be on
extended.
Cook Street.
Yes, sir.
I have one question for Mr. Crosby.
Yes, sir.
The Johnson City location, was there a thought to not paint the brick and just, or it wasn't brick, it was mason, masonite. So that one that you showed from Johnson City, that was not brick?
That is brick.
Oh, it is brick, I'm sorry. And
It's a
did it not
solid
leave it,
brick.
why
All right,
what was
so-
the decision making?
So this is in an overlay district that
Okay.
required a solid colored brick. So we couldn't put any kind of coating on it. And they came every single day and crushed a brick to make sure that it was solid color all the way
So you're telling
through.
me that's not painted?
No, that's not painted, that's a solid color brick.
Oh.
Now, we've positioned ourselves after, and another thing that I didn't mention earlier was, and I just got the call late, because I reached out to Scott McCabe, who is over the design studio for Gensler, a worldwide architectural firm, and asked for some input out of his office about, retail impacts. It's a retail studio. And he was the opinion that we're far better off to maintain our trade dress also, and especially looking at this state here. This one's been positioned that if Johnson City changes their mind, it'll accept the stain and coat easily. What was one of the solutions here. And we ended up with this. We actually tried real hard, and we was working with General Shell. We just couldn't get a production run high enough because their code would allow me to do teal if I did a solid color teal brick. And we just couldn't work out the logistics with General Shell to get the brick made. But we were approaching to get solid teal brick made to meet the requirements.
Is this the one with the brick hot dogs and hamburgers?
Brick hamburgers and hot dogs, that's right. Yeah, you seen $250,000 additional dollars for our artwork in this one.
You told me those hot dogs and hamburgers were brick?
Brick.
Oh.
There's only 16 artists in the
Well, no wonder
United
why
States who can
$50,000
actually sculpt a brick and do that.
I like it.
And that was done in,
I don't like that video, but I like it.
Iowa. I didn't think we were done it.
Thanks, sir.
Okay.
Let me say, I personally have thought long and hard about this, knowing that this was coming before the planning commission tonight. I think it's a very important decision for the planning commission to make. And I would say not just because Mr. Crosby's here, but I would say that the reputation of his company in Southwest Virginia, Upper East Tennessee is impeccable. I think that they are good corporate neighbors. I think they would bring a lot to Abingdon. Aside from the revenues that they would generate, I think that just the corporation itself would bring a lot to Abingdon. I've also thought about the idea of, with the ball fields and the recreational area there, that the majority of the people that are going to be using those facilities, this food service will be where they would head. And anytime you go to one of their restaurants anywhere, the greatest problem that you have is trying to get in and where to put cars.
Right.
And so I say those things that I think are very, very positive. On the other side of the coin, I personally have a great deal of difficulty in approving a building in this development. And I call it swimming pool blue, not teal, but I call it swimming pool blue, with a hot dog and hamburger on top of it. I also have a great problem, and I appreciate what you're saying, and I don't question that at all. Your expertise and your love of artwork is probably a lot different than what mine is, but I can't accept that as artwork. I think I could get by the hot dog and the hamburger if I had the color that we were looking at the Johnson City store. But without that color, with the teal or the swimming pool blue, I'd have a great deal of difficulty in being supportive of it.
My issue, I'd love to have Powell's here, and I hope that we can get this approved. But are we throwing the baby out with the bathwater here and approving this swimming pool teal blue? Where do we now, if we could classify this as a work of art, well, where do we stop when the next person comes in and wants to paint their building chartreuse? Or the next one comes in and wants to paint it neon orange, glow orange. I mean, you know, we've repeatedly faced these kind of things. I remember 5 or 6 years ago, the Food City asked us to get an exemption, special use permit, brought in by Bristol Sign to approve a neon sign. Their old sign was, I think, 7 feet wide, and the new ordinance brought it down to 5 feet if it was digital. So they asked to keep their same footage, and I remember JJ from Bristol Sign, and we said, okay, you can have the 7 feet. And lo and behold, JJ shows back up 2 months later. He's got another client that wants 7 feet to us to grant them a variance. And he said, will you approve food country? So this happens, you know, all the time, and I think we've got to be prepared. How do we look at this and being fair to other people coming? Behind that, what do we, I mean, if we classify this as a work of art and the permit be granted because it is a work of art, I don't really know if we can do that. But what I am afraid of is what comes behind this. And someone's gonna say, well, you let them, how come I can't?
And you know, if you'll recall, when Eastman Credit came in front of us with the building that they proposed to be put in there, we sent them back to the drawing board and said, you know, you need this color and you need more brick and that sort of thing, and they had to step outside of the box just a little bit in order to get that done. So we have done that in this project.
I have another question. Has there been thought of just leaving it just a regular brick and not painting it a solid color? Is it necessary to paint it? Like, I think that Johnson City location would look better if it was just a regular brick.
Yeah, we've looked at everything. That doesn't meet our trade dress, our image.
You don't like, okay, so it doesn't meet your brand.
It's
It's gonna be
our
solid
request
color.
is for what we do, so.
Okay.
And I understand that's gonna be difficult, but, you never know unless they come up here and ask whether you want us here or not.
And that's not the point. We want you here, at least from my personal perspective. Yes, we want you here. And yes, there are a lot of advantages to that. But we've got to consider
the design that we've got here.
But it's not speculated we don't have it written down anywhere, the color. So,
Well, let me ask this
right?
question to Jason. Jason, is there anywhere in our zoning code right now that specifically references colors and regulations of colors?
No, sir.
Okay, so if the opinion is from the attorney, which everybody can disagree with the attorney if they want to, if it's not, which happens on occasion, if it's not in the overlay district, the overlay district guidelines, they don't reference color either?
Not specific.
Okay,
no, sir.
so I guess what I'm having a hard time grappling with is, how do we regulate color when we don't have the legal authority to do it? That's my issue. It's black and white with me. So if that's what this is getting stuck up on, I can't vote against it because I don't have the authority, the code's not giving me the authority to do that. And that's even if I take the opinion that it's in the overlay district, when it's questionable based on what I've seen in my discussions that I've had with Cam. I think there could be, that's just what I'm grappling with. So, but I appreciate your discussions on it and the concerns that you have. I just want to make sure I have the legal authority to vote that way.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't get a chance to sign up, but when appropriate, I'd like to see.
It's probably out of order, but
Well, I won't do it.
thank you so much.
Can we concentrate first on whether or not this building is in the historic overlay district?
It's not. Right.
Now, the list that's in the zoning ordinance says the overlay district is found on the following streets of the town: East Main Street from the historic district to the corporate limits, West Main Street from the historic district to the corporate limits, Combs Street, Whitesville Road, Russell Road, the full length of that, Valley Street, Walton Road, Jonesboro Road, Porterfield Highway, Green Springs Road from the historic district to Cummings Street. Pecan Street from the historic district to the railroad, Hillman Highway from Main to Old 11, Ball Lane, the full length of that, Windale Road, the full length of that, Trigg Street, Deadmore Street, Thompson Drive, and Court Street from Valley to Interstate Route 81. So Cummings Street from the south corporate limits to the historic district is part of a historic overlay. Green Springs Road from the historic district to Cummings Street is part of the overlay. But is this structure going to be on Green Springs Road?
On the
It's on
corner.
Cook Street.
It's gonna be on the corner.
It's on the corner.
It's got a Cook Street address.
I think the technical answer to that is no, Mr. Bradley. It will be on Cook Street. And again, you know, it depends on, I guess, the interpretation of when this development was done, whether it was interpreted at the time that the development itself was on Green Spring Road before. But I will note in the MOU, obviously the drafters of that and the town signed on to this, knew that the overlay district existed, and it's not referenced in this agreement at all. So that would, by exclusion, that would lead me to believe that it doesn't apply to this development really at all. But so I think the answer to that is it doesn't apply. And to build on that, I think the analysis, the framework is the 6.2 design criteria under the MOU. Does this design fit within that criteria or not? And if there is an articulable reason that it not be approved, then I think it needs to be viewed in that framework. Are you saying it doesn't meet those 6.2 guidelines, or it does meet those 6.2 guidelines? Or are we saying that the overlay district applies and that we're looking at this architectural details and that the color or whatever else does not fit within the traditional and contemporary guidelines of the overlay district? So that's where I think the analysis has to come down one way or the other.
frankly, if the structure is not on Green Springs Road, I don't see that the historic overlay applies.
I do tend to agree with Al. I think I don't want to overstep my authority. And if it was clear in the guidelines that we had an authority to do this, I feel a little more comfortable. I understand the concern about the color. Is the artwork, like if this building was moved somewhere else in town, would it be okay with everybody? With some people it wouldn't, I know, but on the planning commission. And that's a question I have to ask. If this building was put, I have to say it was not in the historic overlay district, would you be comfortable with the presentation that Mr. Crosby did, or would the teal still turn you off? And if the answer is yes, then I go back to Jason and I say, well, or I go back to the attorney and I say, based on our code, do we have the ability to say, well, we don't like this color? Are we going to get in the business of regulating colors? And I don't know if I can do that or not. I don't know the answer to that. That's my concern. Yeah. Architecture and color sometimes don't.
I don't think we should deny them from being here because of a color technicality.
And I do know it is appropriate, I think, in overlay districts to regulate colors based on my research and understanding of overlay districts. I don't know if there's specific statute in the state, but I do know it's an accepted practice in overlay districts to do that, just like as you would with architecture. And this would be an example. But then again, if we're grappling with the concept of whether or not it's actually in the overlay district, then those wouldn't apply. The only thing that would apply would be the section of the MOU. So.
Well, I don't think we have much grounds to stand on in dictating the color.
I think
And
that'd be tough.
I'll make the motion that we approve.
All right. Motion.
But I'd also like to make a motion, another one is something that we investigate adding colors to our list of overlay restrictions.
Yeah.
We'll get to that just a minute. Let's take one
We'll do a
motion at
separate
a
motion.
time.
I don't think it's a bad idea. Yeah.
Motion has been made to approve the certificate of appropriateness as stated in the agenda and as requested in the petition. Second has been made by Mr. Anderson. Is there any additional discussion? All right. If not, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Dr. White? Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Mr. Moraney?
Hi.
Mr. Austin?
Nay. All right, it has been approved. Next, we move on our agenda to the discussion regarding the comprehensive plan update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wanted the commission to be aware that the first community meeting for the comprehensive plan update was held on May 7th. Focus was on vision and goals. I think we would have liked to have had a few more people in attendance, but we did get a lot of good feedback. So we'll be getting a draft vision statement, vision and goal statement from PPR, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. And I'll be reporting on that just as soon as we get it. The next scheduled comp plan update community meeting is slated for sometime in July. We haven't got a concrete date yet, but it looks like it's gonna be in July. And the venue will change. We're not staying at the small business incubator. We're gonna try to move it around town.
All right, any questions regarding the comprehensive plan? How about the zoning ordinance update?
Zoning ordinance update is in full swing, and one of the things, Dr. White put you at ease a little bit, that we're gonna be looking at the 22nd of this week, which will be Wednesday, is we're gonna try to focus as much as we can on entrance corridor and maybe try to draft some design guidelines that are specific.
You don't need a specific directive from the planning commission to ask for that. is
I
that
don't know, it might not be a
right?
bad idea to get a motion, and that way we can initiate that text amendment in the event we want to incorporate that into the, I mean, I don't think it hurts.
Yeah, I think we'll go ahead and make a motion on it and vote. And,
How should we state it? That we would like a motion that the town planners, Mr. Boswell, investigate color restrictions
In the overlay district.
in the overlay
Entrance, in the
district.
entrance quarter overlay district. Yeah.
Can you make it broader than that, Dr. White?
Yeah, I'm looking for somebody to give me some help there.
I think we ought to talk about enabling guidelines in the entrance corridor district, just like they have in the
Oh, you're
historic
referring
district.
to the one, okay. That's right.
Including colors and architectural styles, that sort of thing.
Yes.
And you add that to the reference to the ordinance, but have the guidelines outside the ordinance, like they do in the historic district.
Because my own opinion we had, I think we let two slip through.
And
That if we'd had the ordinances tonight, and if we'd had something to stand on, I didn't feel like we had a thing to stand on.
I agree with that.
And it's an error that we probably, or an omission that we didn't even know existed really. We thought we had. I do remember we have done it before though. We made people change the color of the roof or change, but.
You can always ask them,
Never-
you can always ask them, and if they say yes.
Well, I was kind of disappointed in McDonald's. I mean, come on now there.
There's a lot of places that have very, very specific design guidelines, and if you, Jason has found several of these, and we've looked through a lot of examples. They've got 50 pages of what is specifically approved and what staff can rely on, and they say you can have a hip roof, but you can't have a mansard roof, and you can have this color, and you can't have that color. I don't know that you guys want to go to that extent, but something more than just what the overlay ordinance says, which is very vague, and I think frankly, Ramsey, it was vague on purpose when they adopted it in the first place, but it's sort of working counterintuitively to you guys, because you guys don't know what to go on, and the people applying don't know what to go on. So I think if you make that motion, Dr. White, a little bit broader, just for staff. and
Investigate,
the overlay district.
revision
guidelines.
of the overlay district in more detail.
For design review guidelines.
For design review.
perhaps.
Yeah.
You took the words right out of my mouth. What did I say?
You have a second.
In location, in
White
location.
said.
I'll second that.
All right, whatever I seconded, whatever. Mr.
Whatever
White
it
said.
is.
Hairs
Hi,
and
George.
slotted things.
All right.
Split hairs
All in
and
favor,
slotted
say aye.
things.
Aye.
It's in-
And
it's in
opposed,
the
all right.
Oh, well, we didn't
Good
put that
motion,
in it,
Ramsey.
so.
Well, all right, do we have any old business matters that are not on the agenda we need to discuss tonight, or any announcements? If not, I'd like to thank everyone for being here, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second? All in favor, stand up.
Grab your hat.
6:45, you would hit it right on the nose.
Just think about it.
Pardon me?
I don't know why they just didn't make that one all brick in Johnson City. I think it would look cleaner if it was just all brick.